Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to The Claverings by Anthony Trollope, which starts with two young people, Harry Clavering and Julia Brabazon, and they are ending their youthful flirtation. It's involuntary on Harry's part. He is in love with the spirited, goddess-like, beautiful Julia, and Julia would tell you it's involuntary on her part as well. She would tell you she didn't make the rules of the world. Harry has any kind of profession that he could go into. She does not, and doesn't want to disappear into poverty or spinsterhood. So she decides to marry for money. She decides to marry a decrepit, not old, but a decrepit alcoholic peer named Lord Ongar, because he has 60,000 a year. Harry can scarcely believe it. It seems so cynical a decision, but she's decided on it, and we see the wedding, and it's a grim affair. and Harry thinks, well, I have been burdened with a weight of intolerable eternal sorrow, but it isn't much more than a year before he is basically engaged to another woman, to the daughter of his master in his trade, when suddenly word comes back that Lord Ongar has died. Nobody misses him, because he was not only sickly and weak and reedy, but also seedy and a jerk. Even the novel's biggest jerk thinks he's a jerk. So we're not supposed to mourn him at all. But Julia surprises everyone by wanting to come back to England right away, even though her name has been attached to a certain amount of scandal in Italy where the death occurs. Sir Hugh Clavering, who is the head of her family, refuses to have anything to do with her. No, let her stay in Italy until this scandal dies down. Let her stay and live quiet for a year. Then she can come back here and live for the rest of her life. Julia's sister is Hugh's wife, and Julia's sister, Hermione, thinks that Hugh is being mean, very mean. So Julia has decided, she is determined to come back to England, so she needs rooms. At least temporarily. She has a place. She has Ongar Park, which we're going to meet. We're going to see it, but she needs a place to live just temporarily when she gets back into the country. And Harry Clavering decides, in an excess of gallantry, to go to London and arrange that for her, and even meet her at the train station. And there's nothing much that comes of the meeting. It's not like they throw each other into each other's arms, but he does meet her, and reminds himself strenuously, maybe too strenuously, that it's a lucky thing that he's affianced to Florence, to plain old brown-haired Florence instead of Julia, because that would be too much. And that brings us to this next chapter, where you would think we are going to get more in the way of those relationship troubles, but actually Trollope has other relationship troubles to throw in our way. So that's what we're going to get here in chapter 6. This is the Reverend Samuel Saul. We've already heard of him. During Harry's absence in London, a circumstance had occurred at the rectory which had surprised some of them and annoyed others a good deal. Mr. Saul, the curate, had made an offer to Fanny, and in the parlance of the day, that means he has asked her to be his wife. Mr. Saul is the curate. He is an employee of Harry's father, but he essentially does all the work. Harry's father is mostly interested in smoking, so Harry's father doesn't do much, and Mr. Saul does it all. And we've already been told, it's already been hinted to us, that he is an extremely pious individual. And Fanny is one of Harry's sisters. The rector and Fanny declared themselves to be both surprised and annoyed. That the rector was in truth troubled by the thing was very evident. Mrs. Clavering said that she had almost suspected it, but she was at any rate not surprised. As to the offer itself, of course she was sorry that it should have been made, as it could not suit Fanny to accept it. You might wonder why, but of course keep in mind we're in a completely different world here than we are in 2025. In the 1860s and early 1870s, it was a question of, can the couple live together? Do they have money to live on? That actually preoccupies Harry and Julia as well. And not so much whether or not they love each other. Mary was surprised, as she had thought Mr. Saul to be wholly intent on other things, probably clerical things, holy things, church things, but she could not see any reason why the offer should be regarded as being, on his part, unreasonable. "How can you say so, Mamma?" Such had been Fanny's indignant exclamation when Mrs. Clavering had hinted that Mr. Saul's proceedings had been expected by her. "Simply because I saw that he liked you, my dear. Men under such circumstances have different ways of showing their liking." Fanny, who had seen all of Mary's love affairs from the beginning to the end, and who had watched the Reverend Edward Fielding in all his very conspicuous maneuvers, would not agree to this. Edward Fielding, from the first moment of his intimate acquaintance with Mary, had left no doubt of his intentions on the mind of anyone. He had talked to Mary and walked with Mary, and whenever he was allowed to or found it possible to do, when driven to talk to Fanny, he had always talked about Mary. He had been a lover of the good old plain-spoken stamp, about whom there had been no mistake. From the first moment of his coming much about Clavering Rectory, the only question had been about his income. "I don't think Mr. Saul ever said a word to me except about the poor people and the church services," said Fanny. "That was merely his way," said Mrs. Clavering. "Then he must be a goose," said Fanny. "I am very sorry that I have made him unhappy, but he had no business to come up to me in that way." "I suppose I shall have to look for another curate," said the rector, but this was said in private to his wife. "I don't see that at all," said Mrs. Clavering. "With many men it would be so, but I think you will find with him he will take an answer, and there will be the end of it." Fanny perhaps had a right to be indignant, for certainly Mr. Saul had given her no fair warning of his intention. Mary had for some months been intent rather on Mr. Fielding's church matters than on those going on in her own parish, and therefore had seen nothing singular in the fact that Mr. Saul had said more on such matters to Fanny than to her sister. Fanny was eager and active, and as Mr. Saul was eager and very active, it was natural that they should have interests in common. But there had been no private walkings, no talkings that could be properly called private. There was a certain book which Fanny kept, containing the names of all the poor people in the parish, to which Mr. Saul had access equally with herself, but its contents were of a most prosaic nature, and when she had sat over it in the rectory drawing-room with Mr. Saul by her side, striving to extract more than 12 pennies out of a charity shillings, she had never thought that it would lead to a declaration of love. He had never called her Fanny in his life, not up to the moment when she declined to honor of becoming Mrs. Saul. The offer itself was made in this way. She had been at the house of old Widow Tubb, halfway between Cumberly Green and the little village of Clavering, striving to make that rheumatic old woman believe that she had not been cheated by a general conspiracy of the parish in the matter of the distribution of coal, when, just as she was about to leave the cottage, Mr. Saul came up. It was then past 4, and the evening was becoming dark, and there was, moreover, a slight drizzle of rain. It was not a tempting evening for a walk for a mile and a half through a very dirty lane, but Fanny Clavering did not care much for such things, and was just stepping out into the mud and moisture with her dress well looped up, when Mr. Saul accosted her. "I'm afraid you'll be very wet, Miss Clavering." "Well, that would be better than going without my cup of tea, Mr. Saul, which I would have to do if I stayed any longer with Mrs. Tubb, and I've got an umbrella." "But it is dark and dirty," said he. "I'm used to that, as you ought to know." "Yes, I do know it," he said, walking on with her. "I do know that nothing ever turns you away from the good work." There was something in the tone of his voice which Fanny did not like. He had never complimented her before. They had been very intimate and had often scolded each other. Fanny would accuse him of exacting too much from the people, and he would retort upon her that she coddled them. Fanny would often decline to obey him, and he would make angry hints as to his clerical authority. In this way they had worked together pleasantly, without any of the awkwardness which on other terms would have arisen between a young man and a young woman. But now that he began to praise her with some peculiar intention of meaning in his tone, she was confounded. She had made no intermediate answer to him, but walked on rapidly through the mud and slush. "You are very constant," said he. I have not been 2 years in Clavering without finding that out." It was becoming worse and worse. It was not so much that his words provoked her as the tone in which they were uttered, and yet she had not the slightest idea of what was coming. If, thoroughly admiring her devotion and mistaken as to her character, he were to ask her to become a Protestant nun, or suggest to her that she should leave her home and go to be a nurse in a hospital, then there would have occurred the sort of folly of which she believed him to be capable. Of the folly which he now committed, she had not believed him to be capable. It had come on to rain hard, and she held her umbrella low over her head. He was also walking with an open umbrella in his hand, so that they were not very close to each other. Fanny, as she stepped on impetuously, put her foot into a depth of a pool and splashed herself thoroughly. Oh dear, she said, this is very disagreeable. Miss Clavering, said he, I have been looking for an opportunity to speak to you, and I do not know that I may find another as so suitable as this. It's not very suitable, Romeo. She still believed that some proposition was to be made to her which would be disagreeable and perhaps impertinent, but it never occurred to her that Mr. Saul was in want of a wife. Doesn't it rain too hard for talking? She said. As I have begun, I must go on with it now, he replied, raising his voice a little as though it were necessary that he should do so to make her hear him through the rain and darkness. She moved a little further away from him with unthinking irritation, but still he went on with his purpose. Miss Clavering, I know that I am ill-suited to play the part of a lover, very ill-suited. Then she gave a start and again splashed herself sadly. I have never read how it is done in books, and have not allowed my imagination to dwell on such things. Mr. Saul, don't go on. Pray don't. Now she did understand what was coming. Yes, Miss Clavering, I must go on now, but not on that account would I press you to give me an answer today. I have learned to love you, and if you can love me in return, I will take you by the hand, and you shall be my wife. I have found that in you which I have been unable not to love, not to covet, that I may bind it to myself for my own forever. Will you think of this, and give me an answer when you have considered it fully? He had not spoken altogether amiss, and Fanny, though she was very angry with him, was conscious of this. The time he had chosen might not have been considered suitable for a declaration of love, nor the place, but having chosen them, he had perhaps made the best of them. There had been no hesitation in his voice, and his words had been perfectly audible. Oh, Mr. Saul, of course I can assure you at once, said Fanny. There need not be any consideration. I really never thought. Fanny, who knew her own mind on the matter thoroughly, was hardly able to express herself plainly and without incivility. As soon as that phrase, of course, had passed her lips, she felt that it should not have been spoken. There was no need that she should insult him by telling him that such a proposition from him could have but one answer. No, Miss Clavering, I know you've never thought of it, and therefore it would be well that you should take time. I have not been able to make manifest to you by little signs, as men do who are less awkward, all the love I have felt for you. Indeed, I could have done so. If I could I have done so, I should still have hesitated till I had thoroughly resolved that I might be better with a wife than without one, and had resolved also, as far as that might be possible for me, that you also would be better with a husband. Mr. Saul, sure, really, that should be for me to think of. And me also. Can any man offer to marry a woman, to bind a woman for life to certain duties, and to so close an obligation, without thinking whether such bonds would be as good for her as well as him? Of course you must think of yourself, and so I have thought of you. Of course you must think for yourself, and so I have thought for you. You should think for yourself, and you should think also for me. Odd way to put it. Fanny was quite aware that as regarded herself, the matter was one which required no more thinking. Mr. Saul was not a man with whom she could bring herself to be in love. She had her own ideas as to what was lovable in men, and the eager curate, splashing through the rain by her side, was by no means came up to her standard of excellence. She was unconsciously aware that he had altogether mistaken her character, and given her credit for more abnegation of the world than she pretended to possess or desired to possess. He does abnegate the world. To him, the faith in doing good for the poor is everything. That's not true for her. Fanny Clavering was in no hurry to get married. I do not know that she had ever made up her mind that marriage would be a good thing for her, but she had an untroubled conviction that if she did marry, her husband should have a house and an income. She had no reliance on her own power of living on a potato, and with only one new dress every year. A comfortable home with nice, comfortable things around her, ease in money matters, and elegance in life, were charms in which she had not quarreled. And though she did not wish to be hard upon Mr. Saul on account of his mistake, she did feel that in making his proposition he had blundered. Because she chose to do her duty as a parish clergyman's daughter, he thought himself entitled to regard her as a devotee who would be willing to resign everything to become the wife of a clergyman who was active indeed, but had not 1 shilling of income beyond his curacy. Mr. Saul, she said, I can assure you I need take no further time for thinking. It cannot be as you would have it. Perhaps I have been abrupt. Indeed, I feel that it is so, though I did not know how to avoid it. It would have made no difference. Indeed, Mr. Saul, nothing of that kind could have made a difference. Will you grant me this, that I may speak to you again on the same subject after 6 months? It cannot do any good. It will do this good, that for so much time you will have had the idea before you. Fanny thought that she would have Mr. Saul himself before her, and that would be enough. God. Mr. Saul, with his rusty clothes and his thick, dirty shoes and his weak, blinking eyes and his mind always set upon the one wish of his life, could not be made to present himself to her in the guise of a lover. He was one of those men of whom women become very fond with the fondness of friendship, and from whom young women seem to be as far removed in the way of love as though they belonged to some other species. The friend zone. Mr. Saul is firmly in the friend zone. I will not press you further, said he, as I gather by your tone that it distresses you. I am so very sorry if I distress you, but really, Mr. Saul, I can never give you any other answer. Then they walked on silently through the rain, silently, without a single word, for more than half a mile, till they reached the rectory gate. Here it was necessary that they should at any rate speak to each other, and for the last 300 yards Fanny had been trying to find the words which would be suitable. But he was the first to break the silence. "Good night, Miss Clavering," he said, stopping and putting out his hand. "Good night, Mr. Saul. I hope there may be no difference in our bearing to each other because of what I have said today to you. Not on my part, that is, if you will forget it." "Oh, no, Miss Clavering, I shall not forget it. If it had been a thing to be forgotten, I should not have spoken. I certainly shall not forget it." "You know what I mean, Mr. Saul." In other words, drop the idea. You don't have to forget the conversation, like in Men in Black, but drop the idea. That's what she means. "I shall not forget it even in the way that you mean. But I still think that you need not fear me because you know that I love you. I think I can promise that you need not withdraw yourself from me because of what has passed. But you will tell your father and your mother, and of course will be guided by them. And now, good night." Then he went, and she was astonished at finding that he had had much the best of it in his manner of speaking and conducting himself. She had refused him very curtly, and he had borne it well. He had not been abashed, nor had he become sulky, nor had he tried to melt her by the mention of his own misery. In truth, he had done it very well, only that he should have known better than to make any attempt at all. Mr. Saul had been right in one thing. Of course she told her mother, and of course her mother told her father. Before dinner that evening, the whole affair had been debated in the family conclave. They all agreed that Fanny had had no alternative but to reject the proposition at once. That, indeed, was so thoroughly taken for granted that the point was not discussed. That there came to be a difference between the rector and Fanny on one side, and Mrs. Clavering and Mary on the other. "Upon my word," said the rector, "I think it very impertinent. Fanny would not have liked to use the word herself, but she loved her father for using it." "I do not see that," said Mrs. Clavering. "He could not know what Fanny's views in life might be. Curates very often marry out of the houses of the clergymen with whom they are placed. I do not see why Mr. Saul should be debarred from the privilege of trying." "If he had got to like Fanny, what else was he to do?" said Mary. "Oh, Mary, don't talk such nonsense," said Fanny. Got to like? People shouldn't get to like people unless there's some reason for it." "What on earth did he intend to live on?" demanded the rector. "Edward has nothing to live on when you first allowed him to come here," said Mary. That's her intended. "But Edward had prospects, and Saul, as far as I know, has none. He had given no one the slightest notice. If the man in the moon had come to Fanny, I don't suppose she would have been more surprised." "Not half as much, Papa." She's glad he's taking her part. Then it was that Mrs. Clavering had declared that she was not surprised, that she had suspected it, and had almost made Fanny angry by saying so. When Harry came back 2 days afterwards, the family news was imparted to him, and he immediately ranged himself on his father's side. "Upon my word, I think he ought to be forbidden the house," said Harry. "He has forgotten himself in making such a proposition." "That's nonsense, Harry," said his mother. "If he can be comfortable coming here, then he has no reason why he should be uncomfortable. It would be an injustice to him to ask him to go, and a great trouble to your father to find another curate that would suit him so well." In other words, that would do all the work for no money. There could be no doubt whatever as to the latter proposition, and therefore it was quietly agreed that Mr. Saul's fault, if there had been a fault, should be condoned. On the next day he came to the rectory, and they were all astonished at the ease with which he bore himself. It was not that he affected any special freedom of manner, or that he altogether avoided any change in his mode of speaking to them. A slight blush came upon his sallow face when he first spoke to Mrs. Clavering, and he hardly did more than say a single word to Fanny. But he carried himself as though conscious of what he had done, but in no degree ashamed of doing it. The rector's manner to him was stiff and formal, seeing which Mrs. Clavering spoke to him gently and with a smile. "I saw you were a little hard on him, and therefore I tried to make it up for it," said she to him afterwards. "You were quite right," said the husband. "You always are. But I wish he had not made such a fool of himself. It will never be the same thing with him again." Harry hardly spoke to Mr. Saul the first time he met him, all of which Mr. Saul understood perfectly. "Clavering," he said to Harry a day or two after this, "I hope there is no difference between you and me." "Difference? I don't know what you mean by difference." "We were good friends, and I hope that we are to remain so. No doubt you know what has taken place between you and your sister. Between me and your sister." "Oh, yes, I have been told, of course." "What I mean is, I hope you are not going to quarrel with me on that account. What I did, is it not what you would have done in my position, only you would have done it successfully? I think a fellow should have some income, you know." "Can you say that you would have waited for an income before you spoke of marriage?" I don't know what Mr. Saul knows, but we know that Harry doesn't. They didn't want to wait for an income. "I think it might have been better if she would have gone to my father." There's a case there. She go to the father first. There's a case there. It may be that such is the rule in such things, but if so, I did not know it. Would she have liked that better? Well, I can't really say. Her answer would have been no either way. You are engaged? Did you go to the young lady's family first? I can't say that I did, but I think I had given them some ground to expect it. I fancy they all knew what I was about, but it's over now, and I don't know that we need to say anything more about it. Certainly not. Nothing can be said that would be of any use, but I do not think that I have done anything that you should resent. Resent is a strong word. I don't resent it, or at any rate I won't, and there may be the end of it. After this, Harry was more gracious with Mr. Saul, having an idea that the curate had made some sort of apology for what he had done. But that I fancy was by no means Mr. Saul's view of the case. Had he offered to marry the daughter of the Archbishop of Canterbury instead of the daughter of the rector of Clavering, he would not have imagined that his doing so needed an apology. We're getting a clear picture of Mr. Saul here. He's not proud, but he's not cringing either. To anybody, this is the second time we've been told that it wouldn't matter how august his company was. He wouldn't abase himself. He wouldn't cringe. Kind of attractive in a way. The day after his return from London, Lady Clavering sent for Harry up to the house. "So you saw my sister in London?" she said. So Harry resolved not to tell Lady Clavering that he saw her sister. He was only supposed to go up and arrange rooms, but clearly Julia has written to her sister. "Yes," said Harry, blushing. "As I was in town, I thought I might as well meet her, but as you said, Lady Ongar is able to do without much assistance of that kind. I only just saw her." "Julia took it kindly of you, but she seemed surprised that you did not come to her the following day. She thought you would have called." "Oh dear, no. I fancied that she would be too tired and too busy to wish to see a mere acquaintance." "Oh, Harry, I see that she has angered you," said Lady Clavering. "Otherwise you would not talk about mere acquaintances." "Not in the least. Angered me? How could she anger me? What I meant to say was that at such a time she would probably wish to see no one but people on business, unless it was someone near to her, like yourself or Hugh." "Hugh will not go to her." "But you will do so, will you not?" "Before long I will. You don't seem to understand, Harry, and perhaps it is odd that if you did, that I can't just run up to town and back as I please. I ought not to tell you this, I dare say, but one feels as though one wanted to talk to someone about one's affairs. At the present moment I have not the money to go, even if there were no other reason." These last words she said almost in a whisper, and then she looked up into the young man's face to see what he thought of the communication she had made. Because what does that communication mean? It means her husband doesn't give her any money. At all. Hugh Clavering is not as wealthy as Lord Ongar, not by a factor of 10. But he lives in the great house. They have grounds, they have servants, they have presumably farms. He doesn't give her any money. She doesn't even have train fare to get up to London. "Oh, money," he said. You could soon get money, but I hope it won't be long before you go. Remember, Mrs. Clavering has said that Hugh would probably let her go in a couple of days. On the next morning but one, a letter came by post for him from Lady Ongar. When he saw the handwriting, which he knew with his heart at once his heart was once in his mouth, and he hesitated to open the letter at the breakfast table. He did open and read it, but in truth he hardly understood it or digested it till he had taken away with him up to his own room. The letter, which was very short, was as follows. Dear friend, I felt your kindness in coming to me at the station so much, the more perhaps because others who owed me more kindness have paid me less. Don't suppose that I allude to poor Hermione, for in truth I have no intention to complain of her. I thought perhaps you would have come to see me before you left London, but I suppose you were hurried. I hear from Clavering that you are to be up about your new profession in a day or two. Pray come and see me before you have been many days in London. I shall have so much to say to you. The rooms you have taken are everything I wanted, and I am so grateful. Yours ever, J.O. Julia Ongar. Not even Julia Corton. Julia Ongar. When Harry had read and had digested this, he became aware that he was again fluttered. Poor creature, he said to himself. It is sad to think how much she is in want of a friend. By now, so that's the end of this chapter, and by now, some of you may be getting the impression that perhaps Harry's feelings for Julia are not quite as dead as he says they are. And oh, what trouble that might cause. So we will have to wait. We will have to see if they meet. But the import of this chapter is that spindly, ultra-devout, God-bothering Mr. Saul actually proposed to Fanny Clavering. She had no hint that it was coming. All those hours they spent together, joshing each other, teasing each other, ribbing each other, fighting with each other, and then making up over the parish poor books. All those hours, she had no suspicion at all. So we're going to move on from here. Next time, we'll just keep going. So I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.